This episode of Powerhouse is brought to you today by Poly.
It's getting everybody aligned, getting everybody to understand the timing, moving all parties in the same direction at the same time towards this common goal of getting to closing and really supporting that housing generation or preservation for the future.
Welcome to Powerhouse, where we interview the biggest names in housing and ask them about their strategy for growth. I'm Diego Sanchez, president of HousingWire, and my guest today is Seth Gellis, president of Community Preservation Partners. Seth, it's so great to have you on the show.
Great to be here.
Before we dive in, could you briefly introduce yourself and Community Preservation Partners?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a proud husband, father of two, one boy, one girl, ages 10 and 5. Love my dogs. Got two huskies, one that's 7 months old and still going through all the training woes and providing us all the excitement and love in the household. And, we enjoy to travel and all the normal things that families love to do together. So it's exciting. It's always new and always refreshing to get the laughter and joy that the kids and the family bring. So big family person and love that. I think that extends to CPP. I consider each of my team members here part of my extended work family. Community Preservation Partners is a national developer of affordable multifamily housing. We've specialized in the preservation of housing across the country. We've developed over 16,000 units in 19 states, about $4.2 billion of assets. We have a very people-first, mission-driven approach, and we are able to maintain that because we are family-owned by our parent company, WNC and Associates, that was actually founded in 1971. They've invested over $10 billion into over 1,400 properties across the United States. I think they're in 45, maybe 46 or 47 states at this point. That enables us to have a strong focus on partnership with our partners that we may work on deals, with the communities, with our residents. It really allows us to focus on people and the long-term good and the quality that is sort of what CPP has become known for. So, we're excited, we're growing, we're expanding, we're constantly looking at new ways in this difficult environment.
I love that you started with the personal angle and the family angle. Now, does the older husky, are they helping to settle the younger husky or teaching them bad habits?
I think he's a little upset right now. He keeps getting his hind legs bitten for no apparent reason, and he definitely wanted the camaraderie of a brother. He lost his sister, unfortunately, a little over 7 months ago, and really needed another dog in the household. But it's a lot of energy. We're talking about a difference of a 7-year-old versus a 7-month-old. So he loves it when he loves it, and he does it when he doesn't.
That makes sense. So Most of the audience for this program are executives in single family residential, mostly on the real estate and mortgage side. Why should they pay attention to what is happening with CPP and in multifamily in general?
Sure. Yeah. I think there's a variety of reasons why. Ultimately, the more housing we produce, the more supply that we can produce, the better we are addressing the housing affordability crisis. Americans are really losing sight of the American dream of home ownership. And in theory, the way that affordable housing is supposed to work is it's supposed to allow people to save, to be able to get that American dream, to be able to put aside what's needed in order to attain home ownership or the upward mobility in society that they're looking for. And I believe the most recent stats that I've read are something like 75% of Americans can't afford the median price of a home. 58% of them don't believe they'll ever be able to own a home. Rising prices, debt, the cost of a mortgage going, somewhere between 6 and 7% today. It really does make it unattainable. And it's important for people to be able to reach towards, their dreams and what they're looking for. Obviously, rental housing is a pathway to that home ownership, if not for them, for the second generation. If we provide quality housing, the services that support that, and certain classes like homework assistance and otherwise that are known in affordable housing specifically. But if we don't address the housing affordability crisis, there's going to be additional pressures on inclusionary housing and lieu programs. There's certainly going to be more political pressure on prioritizing land use regulation towards single family and upzoning of that because this is really a supply-driven problem and we haven't produced enough housing. So if we all work together through whatever programs exist, we'll be able to make a bigger dent in that and sort of help head off those issues. We're all affected by the same issues: the cost of building, tariffs, labor shortage, quality impacts that the labor shortage could create. So we're all in this together, and we should be really, really fighting together to make a thriving middle class. So, and the bigger picture here is if, we don't produce affordable housing in the communities that we're building our single family and other housing in, we don't have the support workers that really allow those communities to thrive. The communities themselves will change. They won't be what we recognize, where we want to call home. The things that attract and create the marketability in those housing locations where, the single family builders are building will be different and change. And, you may actually see demand reductions in those areas for those areas that actually have the support communities within them.
So you're specifically referring to, folks who may work in the service industry in those towns that are pretty expensive.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the service side, you can look at the teachers, you can look at even firefighters and police officers. If they have to travel hours to get to where they want to live, to have a place that they can call home, a place that's affordable, a place that they can raise a family, that's only going to attract a certain amount of people. And yeah, you will get some of those, but the reality is that you need those community members to live within the communities they're serving. And so affordable housing, obviously serving the lower income thresholds of those, but multifamily housing, generally speaking, call it up to 100% area median income, or just the rest of them that can no longer afford to buy a house.
And does Community Preservation Partners have a geographic focus or a demographic focus when it comes to the properties that you choose to rehab and invest in?
I guess I would say a geographic focus for affordable housing as a national affordable developer is really where we can find an opportunity to make an impact. So we will go to most communities that will support affordable housing and that have programs available to be able to finance that. It's becoming more and more difficult in order to get the financing. We primarily use a vehicle called the Low Income Housing Tax Credit, pairing it with 4% private activity bonds. And that has become a very oversubscribed program in many places, very competitive. There's a lot of conflicting public and social impacts that get thrown into those programs, which drive up the cost and make it even more difficult. So we do limit ourselves to those places where we are supported in the preservation of housing, or on many occasions where there's a Section 8 contract that we can use to leverage the rents that we receive in order to do a meaningful and long-lasting preservation. Typically to the tune of $65,000 to $80,000 per unit in direct hard costs, which is designed to allow those buildings to sort of last for the long term. So if we can make that social impact, we'll definitely be there. We are definitely a social impact developer. And where we'll look at new developments is really in a geographic radius around the offices that we have, and we're located in Irvine, California, and Reston, Virginia. So those require a lot more hand-holding through the process, and so we like to be within a day's flight back and forth.
And are the communities? Do you tend to focus on senior citizens, for example, or is it it's just sort of more broadly defined multifamily?
So more broadly defined, obviously, senior citizens are are great demographics to be able to house. It's a strong demographic. It's growing. It's very needed. Most of them are on fixed incomes. It's very difficult for them to afford quality housing. We love to be able to provide that. But a lot of our work is in the preservation space. So it's really what is available in the marketplace and what is out there, and then what meets the acquisition criteria we have. So that could be either family or senior. We've made a renewed effort into rural housing as well. Those are markets that need to be served, and that's sort of where we founded out of sort of the need to provide that partnership on the investment side that our parent company has. And so we are very comfortable with those more rural locations and serving that population as well. So I would say seniors are great. We love to be able to help house them and give them sort of a place that they can age gracefully. And it's probably far less costly on society when they're living in communities like ours, where they have services and a sense of camaraderie of belonging. But there's only so many of those. So we do both. We don't do as much of the high crime turnaround impact sort of investments as we used to. Just we found that those can be better suited for some of our partners. And so we do partner on things like that. But we really focus on making big impacts and lasting impacts in the communities where we can find those assets.
You mentioned pushing into rural. Is there a density experience that you're more comfortable with in terms of like, tall buildings or a bunch of row houses? Like how do you, what's your specialty?
Yeah. So we started off with just, traditional garden style, maybe some bungalow style, a rural housing. We have now obviously done projects. First off, CPP is sort of unique because of our people first and mission driven way that we go about things. We're for profit. We're not nonprofit, but we really do look at the greater good and what we're doing. And so with our level of sophistication and our programs that we have in place to be able to enter new housing markets, we've been successful at doing projects as small as 14 units and as large as 700 units. We've done projects, as small as $15 million or even $10 million in total development costs to as much as a $500 million. There's just not many people that play in our space that will devote the same energy to those smaller projects as to the larger projects. Likewise, there's not many that'll devote the energy to the rural, to the urban. And I think that's a unique part of being a family-owned business. I'm not part of that family, but we are, I guess, professionally managed family-owned business. And so when you ask what type of property are we best at, we started off with garden style, traditional sort of housing, but we also have a lot of high rises in urban markets and in New York, for example. And so we can do it all. We've developed the systems and process to be able to cater to those populations and to those buildings, no matter where they located. We also are unique in that we will partner. So we call it our local anywhere strategy. So we also bring in local nonprofits, or maybe it's community groups, or maybe it's a partner of WNC's that's done a project in that market. And so that allows us to sort of understand better what it takes to be successful within a new market that we enter into.
And what is the life cycle of a building that you go in and rehab? Do you continue to own and manage the building? Do you give it to a partner to manage? How does it typically work?
Yeah, so we know what we're good at, and we're really good at the finance side, and we're really good at the risk management side, and we're really good at making the right long-term decisions. We are not managers, so we use professional third-party managers. We are not construction managers. We actually use a professional third-party construction manager, and we always bring in a third-party contractor. So the life cycle of our involvement is very long duration, but we focus on asset management very heavily post-completion of the project. And even through completion, there's a lot of compliance aspects to affordable housing. So we have a construction asset management team, we have a stabilized asset management team, and we actually have a capital improvement asset management team that takes care of the long-term needs of the property as they age to make sure they stay up to our quality standards. As an affordable developer, focusing on the low-income housing tax credit, our life cycle from the point in which we get 8609s, which is the vehicle by which we raise equity, those that the credits are passed through to the investor and that they are paying us for. That's why we can keep rents lower, because we have more equity and we've sold those credits to raise that rather than putting in our own equity. But that vehicle is a 15-year life cycle. No less than 10 years, because the credits are taken over 10 years, but there's a 15-year compliance aspect to it. So we are in these for the long term. And so it's really important that we can make the right decisions, that we can invest in these the right way, and that we create thriving communities, because ultimately those operate better.
So your HQ is pretty close to DC, and you make use of a tax credit that I imagine has some policy implications. Is policy and activism a part of what CPP is doing in its day-to-day?
We're absolutely involved through various organizations. I used to be on the Council for Affordable and Rural Housing. The president of WNC, Wilfred N. Cooper Jr., is a member of the board of directors for the California Building Industry Association. He's a member of NHB's Housing Finance Committee. We're very involved in federal and state politics, but through mostly organizations like National East Housing, or the organizations I mentioned. So it's a big part of the advocacy. We're constantly supporting those that support the credit and strengthen the credit, that provide more opportunity to do more housing for those that really need it, which are the lowest income within society. So that's in itself a full-time job, and that's really where the CEO of WNC spends the majority of his efforts. But we are all involved in various organizations to help strengthen and support affordable housing.
And how active is your parent company in your day-to-day and the day-to-day of the overall organization? What's that relationship like?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Obviously, our parent company has been around since 1971. They were around before the tax credit was around. They were a big part of making it a reality, from the transition from selling losses to physicians to selling credits to large banks and investors with CRA needs. So our relationship is strong with them. They do support us. They invest in a number of our communities. Because we do partner with third-party partners in that sort of local anywhere strategy that I mentioned, we do have to be cognizant of getting market terms and getting best pricing and really making deals financially viable for not only ourselves, but for the partners that we bring in and work with us. So our parent company does have to compete for our business, but they're very strong competitors. They're great investors, and we enjoy very much working with them. And we find that there's a great balance between what we get from them in terms of an investor, but also in terms of in that local anywhere strategy, being able to connect us with the partners out in markets that we may not have those relationships, so that we can ensure that we're partnering with people of a like mind that have demonstrated that over a period of time. And that are really fulfilling the needs that we're bringing them into the project for.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, we have a new administration in DC. How do you intend to work with this new administration around issues that are important to CPP? Like I imagine the tax credit is pretty important, and just housing supply in general, which we talked about earlier.
Well, I guess, I'm always an optimist as a developer. So I'm going to go with the build, baby, build, and let the negativity sort of be behind me, and hope that on balance, that's going to be the direction that we're going to see. Obviously, the HUD secretary just came out and reaffirmed that recently on a post that he put out. A lot of our projects are financed with the combination of the low-income housing tax credit and by utilizing the Section 8 contracts. Not all of them. Some of them are just the low-income housing tax credits and other financing tools that we use. So it's important to hear and to continue to support and to advocate for policies that strengthen those contracts, that ensure that they're going to continue to be funded, that's going to focus on everything that it takes to get those done in a timely manner, because we are competing in a public market against yield buyers and other buyers. So we don't necessarily get the give from the sellers that you can have 2 more months. There's a trade-off to that process. So we'll continue strengthening that and working through, again, the advocacy groups that we're a part of to educate everyone on that. The low-income housing tax credit is a very bipartisan supported, benefit to the public. It's not something that is a Republican or Democrat viewed benefits. So we do have that behind us. I think what hurts us is the volatility of just statements that get made and get retracted, and what could possibly occur with tariffs and labor shortages and other things that are definitely part of the broader administration's plan. But we'll all work our way through that, and we'll continue to advocate for why it may not make sense to implement those measures. And we would just hope that in the future, there's less of a reaction, or more of ability to think through it before it gets stated, because then we have to deal with the volatility in the marketplace with investors or otherwise.
That makes sense. And I imagine that any potential cuts at HUD are of concern to you.
Oh, absolutely. Less people there to do that are already overworked is never a good scenario when you're having to keep to very specific timeframes within a purchase and sale agreement. We all live by those purchase and sale agreements. We have very often very large hard money deposits down. So just the volatility alone can really cause a lot of concern with your financing partners. And a lot of times with state agencies, we have to close a project. We have to close into the construction financing by a certain date. If the HUD staff isn't there to perform what they need to do to get the contracts out, we can't close on that financing, and it's by no fault of our own. But that can have huge effects for our entire company that could be just related to certain timing aspects of the programs that we work with.
So you have 2 offices right now, one in Southern California and one in Virginia. But you mentioned, multiple projects in New York. Are there other parts of the country where it might make sense for CPP to have an office so you can take more direct control of some of the projects that you work on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So even though we have 2 sort of what I would call corporate offices, we also have satellite offices. I don't know if I would call them satellite offices, but we have clusters and concentrations of where WNC employees may be, or community preservation partners, CPP employees may be. And that can be, from New York itself. We have a team in San Francisco. We have a team in Illinois and Colorado. So we're pretty well dispersed. Most of that's on the acquisitions or the asset management team is dispersed. We even have folks in Oregon. So we have people everywhere. And so I think for us, you asked earlier about what we look for. The scale of an opportunity has to match the proximity it is to the home office. But we do have folks everywhere that can get to places pretty quickly. If we were going to put an office somewhere, it'd probably be, Colorado or Texas, somewhere central.
So HousingWire agrees with you that the core issue here is housing supply. So let's talk about how you're going to impact, or you and community preservation partners are going to impact supply in 2025 and 2026. Are there some really interesting projects that you're working on that you would care to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We have a property up in New Haven, Connecticut that is a real challenge. It's actually partial market rate, partial affordable housing. It's historic. It's an old brewery. It's a very cool project, very complicated financial structure where we're increasing the amount of affordability that's there in the numbers of units that are protected under the program. So right now there's 30% of the project that has some sort of protection that's at risk of being lost. and we'll be able to increase that to about 80% of the project. So that's a really interesting one. We continue to find opportunities like that, but that's leveraging multiple credit programs in order to create the financing and capital stack to make it work. There's a historic credit, there's a state credit, and then there's the federal low-income housing tax credit that allow for us to be able to protect that asset for the community, but also be able to increase the amount of affordable units within that community.
You're really pulling a lot of financial vehicles and organizations together, it sounds like, to make some of these projects work. Is it like herding cats sometimes, or like is that yes. What your job is like sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, for our development managers, that's exactly what it is. It's getting everybody aligned, getting everybody to understand the timing, everyone's job is the most important to them, and getting people to understand why you need something by a certain date and what happens if you don't get that, and moving all parties in the same direction at the same time towards this common goal of getting to closing and really supporting that housing generation or preservation for the future. When we do these projects, like I said, there's a 15-year horizon, plus oftentimes your construction period, but more often than not, there's very extended use agreements that keep them affordable well beyond that 15-year period. So this is really important work for the community. It's really important work for the nation. Most of these are in irreplaceable locations. You couldn't afford to build now. Some of them in the future can be redensified and provide a lot more housing in the next go around. We're already preparing for that and looking at each opportunity with that in mind. They can only be renovated so many times before they have outlived their useful life. But others are just, towers and places that you could never get and compete for affordable housing with today's cost structures to develop housing generally, whether it be single family or multifamily. It's just so costly to develop these days that, it'd be really hard to develop affordable in these locations with the resources that are available.
There have been so many articles over the past couple of years about the opportunity to retrofit office buildings to become, residential housing, but it seems like very complicated. Are those projects part of your pipeline?
So interesting enough, we have a couple that are in front of us now. We don't have any that are part of our pipeline. A building has to be developed in a very specific way for that to make financial sense. It sounds sexy and it sounds easy, but if they aren't built with stacks in line for your plumbing to be able to provide, a bathroom for each unit or ventilation for the kitchens, the process of putting those in can be so expensive that it's counterproductive and it costs more to do so. So what do you get out of that? You get sort of the irreplaceable location that some of those office buildings are located in. And from that perspective, it's probably a good policy to look at them. But from a pure like dollars and cents, it doesn't make as much sense as we would all like it to. If it did, everyone would be doing it, and they'd be doing it anyways.
Well, Seth, this has been a really interesting conversation. I appreciate you joining me today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Diego.